Hello? Hello? We are back. We're doing another one of these, so let's give our wheel a spin. For those of you who don't know, I'm just taking a look at a random creature from Monster Core and giving my thoughts on its design and how it stands up to the monster creation rules and things like that. I'm a little off screen here because Archives of Nethys uses a full width thing, so I'm trying not to cover too much. So let's give our wheel a spin. And we are looking at Quai Dau To. I actually don't know this one. Okay, so here we are with the Quai Dau To. They're coming in here. What a strange looking creature. I'm guessing that this is based off of real world folklore to some degree. And so unlike with the Soulbound doll where I skipped some of its lore, I'm going to take a look at this one's lore because I want to know about it. It's a level 13 creature. This big-headed beast is covered in glittering scales. Its eyes are like large copper pots, and its mouth is full of sharp teeth. Despite its fish-like appearance, the Quai Dau To spends most of its time on land, hunting along riversides or lakes. It uses its trunk to drain the nearby water before using it with deadly skill. A Quai Dau To can expel the water with a force strong enough to knock a knight off a horse, or gently enough to surround themselves in a veil of mist. A Quai Dau To is extremely sensitive to sound. If they hear too much ruckus near their hunting grounds, they violently attack. Their silent movement allows them to sneak up on such distracted prey despite their massive size. Researchers have discovered, after much study, that Quai Dau Tos don't have ears in the traditional sense. They have an organ in the upper part of their skulls that inflates to hold the water they use in their attacks. This organ is extremely sensitive to vibrations in the air and is used as a pseudo-ear. Alright, and they've got standard DC for their level, for arcane in nature, because they're a beast, of 31, and an unspecific lore would give you a DC 29, and a specific lore would give you DC 26. So they are a huge beast. They're on page 284 of the Monster Core if you want to crack yours out and follow along. So they have a perception of 25, dark vision, mist vision, which we'll get to, imprecise sense 120 feet, which is pretty high. Normally, you do not see scent going that high in terms of distance. Normally you see 30 or 60 feet. So mist vision, right here in our first section, ignores the concealed condition from mist and fog. Straightforward, simple, matches with their narrative of being able to create mist, so it doesn't put them at a disadvantage. Scent, imprecise, basically won't do much other than alert them to the presence of things. Not necessarily a location without some extra checks. Very good against invisible things. They have athletics 27, stealth of 25, and survival of 24. 8 strength, 4 dex, 8 con, -3 intelligence, so they are just barely above animal intelligence. Very still instinct driven, but they've got a little bit more behind the eyes, and -1 charisma. They're not very convincing one way or other, and are probably a little too strange to be incredibly intimidating. Let's look at building creatures here. And we can look at our perception at level 13. 25 is a little lower than high. So, we can check out their wisdom is at 5. So that's moderate. And so they've got a little bit of a boost to wisdom, basically. Or a little bit of a boost to perception, I should say. Because they're over moderate. And athletics. Athletics is incredibly common on huge creatures. At 27, they are a straight high on that. Their stealth is 25, which means they've actually got more proficiency in stealth than they do in athletics. They're getting a lot more out of their strength bonus than they are their dex here. And their survival, which is wisdom based, is a 24, which means that they actually have one rank less of proficiency in survival than they do in stealth. So this is a thing that you can look at to sort of get a slightly deeper understanding of where a creature's focuses lie. It's very concerned about being stealthy. It has honed that skill more than it has athletics or survival. It's less concerned, though not unconcerned by any means, it is less concerned with finding food or shelter than it is about avoiding something. Perhaps predators, perhaps it just doesn't like being messed with, which given it doesn't like a ruckus, that makes sense. They're very stealthy creatures. And then it's kind of just riding off the fact that it is physically strong for its athletics here. And you can tell all that just between the relation between its actual scores here and its skill scores here. Because while these do not inherently directly affect what these scores are, they do inform them. They act as a means of informing the particular scores here. The reason I say that survival is one tier below stealth, which is because despite wisdom being one higher than dexterity, its survival is one lower than its stealth, which means it has 2 points less of proficiency in survival. And so you can use that sort of analysis to go like, okay, this thing mostly cares about stealth. Its strength, its athletics may be higher, but it doesn't focus on it that much. It's missed vision. I love abilities like these where can see through thing that normally causes a hindrance, especially when there is missed breath or an ability that utilizes that on the creature. Like there's white dragons from the pre-master, for example. They could see through ice and snow unhindered. That was reliant on a environmental effect. They couldn't do anything about it. Like they didn't make it snow they didn't make it concealed or whatnot, although a spellcasting version probably could have. I like when a creature is able to actually create the conditions that it can see through, and the most common version of that is smoke sight, where they're able to see through fire and smoke, because it's relatively easy to light things on fire, and those creatures usually have the ability to light things on fire. But we'll move on from that. We have an AC of 32, Fortitude of 26, Reflex of 19, which is a whopping 7 points lower, and a Will of 21. So it's definitely, despite being fairly dexterous, that is its weak point. That is its weak point right there. It's got kind of a sharp mind, and that is shown by the fact that its wisdom is higher than its dexterity. So reflex is its weak point, and of course con is right up there with its strength, so there is your high fortitude. Again, these numbers do not directly force any of these numbers, but they inform them. And you could say that, well, maybe this creature was more of a spellcaster than a physical attacker, in which case, you know, the will and fortitude might be swapped, or at least swapped in terms of their order of efficacy. But let's compare these numbers to its level. So we have saving throws for 13, 29, 26, or 29 is extreme, 26 is high, 23 is moderate, 20 is low, and terrible is 18. So it has a nearly terrible reflex save. It's between 18 and 20. So it is straddling the line. It's not rock bottom, but it's pretty close. And we've just got a slightly above average will. So pretty mediocre defenses right there with a high fortitude. Just straight high, right on the money. And we can actually go look. Let's look at con is +8. And con for ability modifiers on 13, 8 is high. So we can take another look here. What is 4? 4 is low. So its wisdom, or its reflex, is actually getting a tiny boost somewhere. Or maybe it's got a tiny detriment from maybe being too large or something like that. But its will is 1 above, so its will is aiming for moderate, but it goes 1 above the low value. Let's see here. So moderate for level 13 is 5. So they're doing something here that is a scaling effect that is, quote, coterminous with like a item bonus sort of thing. It doesn't have any item bonuses, but it's sort of tilting that way a little bit. So generally when you see that, they are either factoring in some intangible aspect of the creature, or they're actually doing the math. So let's take a look at it. We've got a level 13 creature, right? So 13 plus 5 is 18. And so we are not an even number away on the will save. So it's not a proficiency thing. They're using some intangible factor there to determine its will save. And the same thing is going to happen with dexterity, because we already know all odd numbers are not going to be 2 spaces away. And so reflex and will have some sort of intangible effect on them. Reflex is getting a -1 most likely, and will is getting a +1. Most likely what's happening is reflex has the moderate save of 20, but it's 1 lower than moderate in the actual score, so we're getting a minus. Let's see. Building creatures. Let's go back to saves right quick, because maybe that's what's happening with will as well. 13. So I don't think so then. Because, oh no, okay, so 20 is low, but they have the moderate score. So they started with low, but the moderate score for is 23 for saving throws. But they went with low and then added 1 from them having a 5 instead of a 4. So that's what happened there. Some of this stuff I'm analyzing live, and, well, I mean, I'm analyzing the whole thing live, but it's not necessarily clicking until I take a look at it for a minute. So yeah, so they started with low here and subtracted 1, which then makes dexterity weird. Unless they started with terrible and gave them +1 for having just low. So that's probably still riding a bit of an intangible factor there. Now let's look at AC. Armor class 13, 37 to 31 range. We are looking at, a 32, which is slightly higher than high. So generally you consider that an extreme DC in terms of things, but it's on the low end, so you kind of squint at it and go, it's kind of in between. And that will probably play into its HP. So it has 300 HP, and that is in the above high range, just by a hair. 2 extra HP over the max of high. and it lands in between high and moderate for the level above. Let's see if we can find out why. So it's immune to blinded and dazzled, which probably don't have much of an effect on it, and it's weak to Sonic 15, so that's a sizable weakness. It is specific, and it's not the most easily attainable weakness. There are fewer spells that deal Sonic than other more common weaknesses, but there is a common rune that can deal Sonic damage, as well as a variety of alchemical options like Thunderstones. So it's not inaccessible by any means, it's slightly less common. But it is a hefty number, so that is likely also a big reason for this higher HP, despite it having a fairly good AC. It does, remember, have two relatively trash saves, so these are our middle grounds here. Now, that being said, Sonic damage tends to go off of Fortitude, so it does have a good defense off of its primary weakness, though some Sonic, I believe, goes off of Reflex. It's just not as common. And let's see, 15 falls into almost the maximum weakness for level 13, so it is very high. One of the things I do find a little sad about creature design in 2E is we lock to increments of 5 a lot. That was how it worked in 1E, and it's easy. It's very easy to do, but we do have this table that gives us not increments of 5 a lot, and I think that should be used more. But that's just me. You cannot you can't screw with this creature's eyes, basically. Under any circumstances, the most you're going to screw with it is casting Greater Darkness, or level rank 4 Darkness or higher. That is the most you're going to impede its sight, basically, unless you can make smoke or fire or bushes to give you concealment. And they talk about its eyes being like copper pots, so those are obviously a supernatural element of the creature that are very resilient, and this is sort of a bit that's said kind of quietly up here in the lore, but said very loud right here in the mechanics. And that's one of the things I do like about the creature design in 2E, is both the lore informs the mechanics and the mechanics inform the lore. So it has a couple of defensive abilities here. It has an aura that is emotion, fear, mental, and visual of 60 feet called Frightful Sight. And this functions as a DC 32 Frightful Presence aura, except a creature does not attempt its save until it sees the Quai Dau To. So they do have to see the creature in order to be afraid of it. And this is a good reason, I think, that it does not need intimidation. It's just scary looking. End of story. And then it has Reflective Scales, which is a reaction that a creature within 30 feet casts a spell with the light trait or uses an ability with the light trait. The effect is that the Quai Dau To adjusts its position to reflect the light off their scales in a blinding display. All creatures in a 30-foot emanation must succeed a DC 33 Fortitude save or become blinded for 1 round. That's pretty good. There's no limit on this either, other than the fact that it's a reaction, so once a round. So it can go about blinding you pretty often. This would be an incredibly dangerous creature to have in a dark area, because you go in and light shkakity pow blind. So this is very scary to have ambush you in a dark place, because then you go, oh, we need light. Oh, now we're all blind. It's fast. It has a speed of 40 feet. So them little legs down here are doing some work. and it has swim 30 feet and inflate, which I guess we'll get to. Looking at its body, its melee attacks are not surprising. Jaws, tail, and foot. So it does have little clawed toes, and its tail looks thick and strong, and it's got a nasty maw on it. So 3d12 plus 14, that's going to be, say what, 13 plus 6 is 19 plus 14 is 33 average damage. Let's take a look at the damage for level 13, and so that is just slightly higher than high. It's 1 point off of the average damage for high's suggestion, and its to hit is 27, which is straight high. So it's dealing high damage, or it's doing high hit, high damage, which is pretty standard for like straightforward beat 'em up style creatures. It has a reach of 10 feet. You see a drop in damage for reach of 20 feet with no additional traits. That's pretty common. It's effectively a secondary attack with more range. It has a foot attack with the same chance to hit, but is agile and drops to the same, but has no extra range. So this is a reach of 5 feet, which is not actually listed here. Some creatures in Monster Core did list reach 5 feet for some of their attacks. And while it's wordy, I think it's actually not a bad idea to include. But generally, if no range is listed, it's either 0 feet for tiny creatures or 5 feet for anything else. So it doesn't have reach on this, but it is agile, so it gets the exact same drop in damage. So this is definitely an in-your-face attacker for the most part, but it's got some special abilities, as pretty much everything does. Drain water. It has one action, it's manipulate, so it is going to trigger a reactive strike. Requirements: the Quai Dau To is within 10 feet of a body of water that's at least 10 feet deep, and their water sac is empty. This is likely going to be defined by another ability. Effect: the Quai Dau To sucks water in through their trunk to fill their water sac, lowering the level of the body of water by 10 feet. This is potentially insane, but a place where the GM has to go, is this body of water small enough for it to drop it by 10 feet? Yes? No? Okay. And then they decide whether or not that actually applies. All creatures in the water within a 30-foot emanation are off guard until the start of the Quai Dau To's next turn. So this is another bit of mechanics, leaning into the narrative of the creature, and probably also deciding whether or not the body of water lowers by 10 feet. It's a 30-foot emanation, so this is a huge creature, so 30, 30, and 15 is going to be 75-foot diameter area. That's pretty big, but if you're talking about like a lake, it's probably not going to do a whole lot, except maybe for one round. Like, I imagine that until the start of its next turn, just as it says here, the water's probably not doing much. But if the body of water is larger than that, the next round, water rushes back in. And this can be something that's not listed here. That water rushing back in could push creatures inward as per occurrence. Or a river could come rushing back down and push everything along. This makes for a really dynamic potential in aquatic combat. Of course, if it's more of a, well, the water didn't bottom out anywhere, like you're out in the middle of the water, so it kind of just loops and fills in the hole, maybe it pushes them towards the middle, maybe it's just an up and down thing. That's arguable, and you can go however you want for the simplicity, but I argue that in shallows, this makes for an extremely dynamic battlefield, and I think that's really cool. Inflate, one action. The Quai Dau To inflates their body. They become gargantuan, so they go up a size class. Gain a fly speed of 30 feet until the end of their next turn, and then fly. They deflate if they fall unconscious or dismiss the effect. So they turn into Kirby. They do for 1 round. That's hilarious. I like that. That's cool. I think that's really neat. It basically just has a fly speed because this is one action that also bakes in the fly. Except for one thing. The fact that this has a duration does not give them constant arrest of fall. So you can kick them off an edge, and if they're, and like say they cannot reach the edge to grab onto it with their mouth or their foot or their tail even, they're just yeet upon into the distance, or it crumbles away or something and they're falling. They can't go, I arrest a fall as a reaction and take no damage. They can still take fall damage, and that is the niche of this ability, is that they can still take fall damage unless they were already inflated and didn't spend their reflex save. But it also leans into the flavor and strange abilities of the creature, which, again, mechanics and narrative are not separate. They feed into each other. So Mist Breath, 1 action. It has a lot of 1 action abilities, which is really rare. Most of the time you'll see more like Spout Water down here, that's 2. So this is a primal water effect. No other writers, so it's not going to provoke any reactions outside of a readied reaction, perhaps. The Quai Dau To's water sac is full as a requirement. The Quai Dau To empties their water sac to breathe out mist in a 10-foot emanation, which, remember, this is a huge creature, and if it's inflated, potentially gargantuan, and so 10 feet in every direction from its edges gets covered in mist, including the spaces in there, for if it changes size or moves. All creatures within the mist become concealed, and all creatures outside the mist become concealed to creatures within it. That's pretty standard. Dissipates after 1 round. That's why it's 1 action. It technically is 2 actions. And so Drain Water and Mist Breath are 2 interactive things that both do something, but feed into the other one. So it drains water 1 turn, and either immediately spits it back out as mist, or they alternate turn to turn. And so this one, you can think of them sort of as action and a half abilities, because it can't do this one twice in a row. It can't do this one twice in a row. It has to do either one. Because this one is, it sucks up to water, and this one is it spits out the water. And then Spout Water also requires the sac to be full, so this one's a 2.5 action. It requires it to drain water first, which probably in combat the GM's going to decide it's got a water sac full unless something prior to combat would have dictated that it used it already. So the Quai Dau To's water sac is full. Effect: the Quai Dau To empties its water sac to blast water from its trunk, dealing 90-10 bludgeoning damage to all creatures in a 90-foot line with a DC 33 basic reflex save. A creature that fails is pushed 10 feet or 20 feet on a critical failure. This is sort of like a it's not non-magical because it's primal, but this is a non-spell hydraulic push. Let's go look at building creatures and see how it meshes up. At 13, we have 7d6 or 14d6 damage for limited use or unlimited use, and this is decidedly probably in between those. So, but maybe not. Maybe it's considered limited use because the 90-10 might be roughly equivalent. Let's open up any dice. And so 14d6 and 9d10. Calculate. So we're looking at 49 damage and 49.5 damage. So it is considered a limited use ability despite having no actual recharge on it. And this is going to be because it does require one action preemptively to use this 2-action ability. So it's a 3-action effect, sometimes of which, even though they might not have a recharge on them, is generally considered to be a limited use ability, though this is a little on the strong side. It is, however, single target. No, it's a line. No, never mind. It is a line. So it's a narrow AoE, but it is an AoE, and it's pretty strong, but it does require 2.5 actions. The reason I say 2.5 actions is because you get something else out of this one action. This one action provokes certain reactions, whereas neither Mist Breath or Spout Water do. But this one is necessary for either of these two, and it has to choose between them. So it can do this every round, in theory, if it sucks up water and goes boosh, and just sucks up water and boosh over and over again. That's quite strong, but it will teach you very quickly. Do not stand in a line. Or if you're going to stand in a line, stand in a line that is horizontal to the creature, so it might waste actions trying to line you up. And so I think that's slightly on the strong side, but not bad. It's definitely pretty good. And we've got a sidebar here of impossible flight. Despite the laws of the natural world, this large-headed creature can fly. The Quai Dau To achieves its incredible feat by inflating itself, allowing it to seemingly swim through the air like water. While inflated in this way, the Quai Dau To somewhat resembles a pufferfish. And so that's pretty much it for this creature. I think it's really neat. I'm guessing that it's based off of some sort of mythological creature or cryptid. It actually reminds me of a fey creature called a Grodare. That's also in Pathfinder, at least in the pre-master. I'm not sure if it made it into the remaster or not. In its sort of suck up water and spit it out situation. But I think it's really cool. It's a pretty powerful creature. Of course, it's level 13. And I would hate to live in a village that was near one of these things. Just because they would absolutely wreck anytime anybody had a party. But I guess if you're quiet, they probably just leave you alone. And I could also see, as a powerful, somewhat mythological, magical creature, people would probably grow a sense of healthy respect for it. Perhaps going into superstitious reverence, or just sort of a more natural, like, this is a dangerous creature, you respect dangerous things so that they don't use that danger against you situation. But let me know down in the comments what you think about the Quai Dau To. Let me know if I've been saying it wrong this whole time, if you know how to properly pronounce it. Because they did not include a thingamajiggy, an enunciation guide here. I like it. It's definitely a bruiser. It's got some really weak defenses, but it makes up for it with decent HP, a good weakness, and decent AC as well. Or really good HP and decent AC. It has ways to debuff, it has ways to manipulate the battlefield, it has ways to deal significant damage and put distance, which is mildly counterintuitive for it because it does seem to be an in-your-face creature otherwise. But I think it's really interesting. It's kind of quirky, and it looks quite quirky, which is just appropriate. So, thanks for sticking around. Thanks for checking out this video. Let me know if you saw the previous one on the Soulbound doll. And give it a like, subscribe, all that stuff. Comment down below. Tell me if you like this video idea. Tell me if you hate these video ideas. Whatever floats your boat. And I'll see you next time. Peace.